just thanks. It's such an honor to be with you all. Brenna and I are so grateful for that. We're grateful to be co-laborers with the Society of Jesus and its apostolates, including its secondary school apostolates, and really feel a sense of common mission and desire to walk with all of you. It's not lost on me that just 6 years ago, last month, Father Sosa introduced the Universal Apostolic Preferences, right? That call us to deepen our commitment to Ignatian spirituality, to accompanying young people, to walking with the excluded, and to caring for our common home. And these, frankly, like in our amidst our political landscape, some of these feel a bit more challenging today than maybe they might have at other times in over the past few years. Catherine asked me to talk a little bit about the Arupe Leaders Summit, which is after the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice. The Arupe Leaders Summit is our longest running in-person program. Just seeing who's out there, I know many of you have attended the Arupe Leaders Summit with students. And so you've come to know the ways that we try to weave the life and legacy of Father Arupe into what is called the Student Leadership Challenge model, which is a leadership, one of those frameworks of leadership. There are many of them out there. The Arupe Leaders Summit has been going on for about a dozen years. It has had the grace, the opportunity to welcome. We've had the grace, the opportunity to welcome hundreds of students. This just yesterday we finished up our last Arupe Leaders Summit of the season. I think we had 120 students across 3 summits this spring, and also we're able to welcome so many faculty and staff from Jesuit and other Catholic institutions across the country to have conversations about the integration of justice into the faith justice work of their schools. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with the Arupe Leaders Summit, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about like what it's all about. So I hope that's okay. Catherine, I even prepared some slides. I was taught at Walsh Jesuit High School that visual aids are critical to good public speaking. Mr. Greskovich taught me that many, many years ago. So I don't shy away from it. I love this picture. This is from a couple years ago of students at a summit in the Midwest from places like Walsh Jesuit, St. Ignatius, Cristo Rey, Christ the King, and other schools. And one of the things about Arupe Leaders Summits, I'm going to describe some of the seriousness of the topics, but Arupe Leaders Summits are fun. They're just a fun place for students to come together, right? And for ISN, forming young people, working with young people has always been a core part of our mission and continues to be something that we really feel a strong preference to be engaged in today. I think everybody's familiar with ISN, so I'm not going to tell you about who we are, but I will tell you we're excited to be celebrating our 20th anniversary. We were founded in 2004 as a lay organization that would be an affiliated work. In other words, work in partnership with the Society of Jesus, though not a formal work of the Society, but they would co-labor. And I'm just so grateful for the ways that Jesuit institutions and Jesuits themselves and lay collaborators invite us into that co-laboring. I wanted to just talk really briefly about Father Arupe because I think it's really important, particularly, last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Men for Others, Men and Women for Others speech in 1973 in Spain, given to alumni of Jesuit schools, right? And I think that Father Arupe's words 50 years ago are just as relevant to the work of Jesuit education today. And sometimes I worry a little bit that they've gotten a little bit off track, right? Or maybe they're misinterpreted sometimes. One of the things when we think about the original grad statements, because I know that in some institutions the grad statements have gotten modified, added on to, but when you think about the original grad statements and the intentionality around the phrasing committed to doing justice, not open to justice, willing to tolerate injustice, okay with other people who are into justice, but trying to form young people who are committed to doing justice. I think that's a unique call in the church. I think it speaks to the unique vocation that Jesuit educators have, right? That is really challenging us to think about the relationship between the gospel and the work of justice. I love that line at the end of this quote. Love of God, which does not issue injustice for others, is a farce. That's powerful, right? And then this one, which comes from men and women for others, to be just, it is not enough to refrain from injustice. You have to go further, refuse to play its game, substitute love for self-interest and as the driving force of society. I think this idea of substituting love for self-interest in today's world is so critical. Throughout society, even in the political sphere, I think we see self-interest as a primary driver of what's moving people, what's causing them to do certain things, to take certain actions, to call for certain policies. And so I do think we are challenged to offer a countercultural message of the gospel. And I think Father Rupe really highlights that message here. So the Arupe Leaders Summit begins with inviting students to reflect on what we call a boy with bread moment. And I love this quote from James Mancaus, who wrote his dissertation about the life of Father Rupe and its influence on the faith justice mission of the Society of Jesus, talks about Rupe having this experience while in formation as a young Jesuit, where he had an encounters with kids who were begging on the street, simply asking for a piece of bread, and how that had a deep influence on his vocation, how he approached his Jesuit formation. Of course, Father Rupe went on to come to know refugees, people who were seeking, assistance in Vietnam, trying to leave the country, caused him to found the organization that Clara works for, Jesuit Refugee Service International, the only international apostolate of the Society of Jesus. And of course, Arupe, was deeply moved by his experience in Hiroshima, responding to those who were harmed by the atomic bomb that fell there. But we asked students to reflect on a moment like Arupe had, of encounter with someone who is in some way marginalized. And we literally take this, and this takes 30, 40 minutes, but we allow each student in a circle of about 45 or 50 students to share their bread moment. It is so powerful to hear young people talk about why they are moved to serve. They are moved to be concerned about injustice. We've all, as Jesuit educators, we've all had these experiences in our own lives that have caused us, to be engaged in this vocation, right? It's not easy work, especially in today's world. We've all had those moments, though. And when you hear young people share those moments, openly, it sets the tone for the rest of the weekend. This happens on the opening night, Friday night, and it sets the tone for the whole rest of the weekend to create a powerful gathering rooted in the idea of solidarity. How do I develop solidarity with the person I encountered through that bread moment? But also, how do I stand with people who maybe I don't know, but others shared, whom are struggling or vulnerable in our society? So the Rupe Summit kind of takes 4 or so concepts from the Student Leadership Challenge, which is, like I said, this kind of leadership model that was written from Covey's 8 Habits for Effective Leaders, but in kind of a teenage version. And the 4 concepts are model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, and enabling others to act by encouraging the heart. And then we bring elements of Arupe's life. into that conversation. So we help students learn who Pedro Arrupe is. They often know the catchphrases, but they don't necessarily know the deeper story. And then, and we invite them to engage in each of these topics throughout the summit. And, you know, one of the things that I think they learn, because I think often when we hear the top level ideas about Father Arrupe, we don't realize how challenging leading the Society of Jesus to a commitment of faith that does justice was. We don't realize how, during that time, in fact, we might say that today is a very tumultuous time in our world, politically, socially, economically, whatever, right? But the time when Father Arrupe was beginning to lead the Society of Jesus was also a very tumultuous time, not only in our country, but across the globe, right? So when we talk about inspiring a shared vision, older Jesuits have shared stories of what the vibe was in their Jesuit communities as GC 32 and GC 34 came out. Yes, there were people that were very excited, to step into the vision that Father Rupe and other Jesuit leaders had identified. But there were also people who were very critical, who were pushing back, right? And so, inspiring a shared vision isn't just being a great cheerleader, but also kind of moving an idea along. And challenging the process, the same piece, right? That at times, I mean, if you listen to Father Rupe's words in that 1973 speech, you hear him not, I think sometimes it gets misconstrued. In fact, maybe this has happened at your schools where students or staff have started to say men and women or men for and with others, right? A lot of schools have added the and with, which in one way it makes sense to me. But I think you have to remember the context in which Arrupe was talking about men for others. He wasn't critiquing the alumni of the schools as much as he was critiquing the schools, right? He was saying that they had failed in helping their graduates understand the relationship between understanding the relationship between their education and how it should impact the world, that they needed to move beyond self-interest to a more solidarity-oriented interest, that it wasn't just about how that education served them, but how it served the needs of the world, right? And so that had to be challenging, and challenging the process, to be sure. And the fourth session is this idea of encouraging the heart. So that session always happens on Sunday morning. It's kind of that send off, that call to action, and groups leave very energized. They have a chance not only to meet students from other schools, but also to spend time as a school delegation and talk about the ways that the experience can influence their school communities. And I think the thing about the Arrupe Leader Summit that I think is really valuable is both this piece of self-reflection, institutional reflection, how can we move our school closer to where we feel we're called to be, but then this experience of encountering people from so many other places. This past summit here in the Midwest that we had, I think we had 2 Cristo Rey schools, we had 2 co-ed schools, a couple single-sex schools. I mean, just a really eclectic mix of young people coming from different life experiences. And when you come together with people who are inspired by mission, but through different lenses of life, you recognize both the universality of the church, but you also recognize the value of a diverse community that brings different things, different ideas, different ways of looking at the world to the table, right? So Arrupe Leader Summits can foster some of that energy and some of that spirit. So I wanted to stop there and Oh, and thanks, Brenna's. Thank you for being my hype person and putting that link in the chat. Very helpful. I want to stop there, and I thought I'd just open it up. One, for those who have had students come to the Uruguay Leader Summit, if there's anything you wanted to share about your own experiences and the ways that maybe the experience has touched your community or influenced your students, or your faculty members. Maybe one other thing I'll just say real quickly is that we host during the Uruguay Leader Summit, we host 2 sessions for faculty. And one of the cool things is that we get a really eclectic mix of folks from across the buildings. It's great to have Christian service directors and campus ministers, but we also have science teachers and math teachers and alumni volunteer corps members and Jesuit volunteers who are serving in Jesuit institutions. It's a really diverse community of folks. And we spend the first night reflecting on the question, what does social justice mean at your school? And it's a really interesting self-reflection question that invites a lot of, open conversation about both the graces and the challenges of seeking to have a school community where you are trying to help young people develop a commitment to doing justice. And then the second session is focused typically on an article. We used one that was written by a few folks from the network, focused on the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Jesuit secondary education, and was published in America Magazine. And the article is very, very provocative, particularly in today's time and place. So it was a really rich conversation that folks had talking about that. So that just gives you a little sense. But does anyone who's been part of an Uruguay Leaders Summit, including Brenna, want to share anything else that their school communities have experienced or encountered, or graces from it, things like that?
I can go because I knew that we were talking about this. So I asked a kid who just got back from the Aruba Leader
Oh,
Summit,
nice.
what did he take away from it? Um, Brenna, aside from the fact that he called you Brina, he loved it. He felt kind of to your point, Chris, about Arupe's speech was calling to task the schools, not the kids. He feels like Regis talks a lot about justice, but he doesn't know how to translate that into action. Um, like we learn about all these topics and we do all these things, and he said it's the ISN things because he's also been to the teach-in that have given him like concrete. Uh, Here's how you do this. So he really liked the time and the steps dedicated to how do you get from I care about this thing to I'm going to take action on this thing, which I think is where a lot of us are, regardless of age.
Uh-huh.
I will say that group was particularly friendly, and they got Grace Yonkers Tells brought students from Cristo Rey, and at the end, like the students were all hugging each other, and she said, does this happen at every Rupe Summit? And I said, yeah, kind of. They were especially excited to be best friends, and I think that the great benefit of this program is just students understanding that there are students across the country who also care about justice, and that action planning time with their school community to think about, okay, how can we move from just a charity lens towards justice, like Arupe is calling us to do. So yeah, your students were awesome.
And that's a good point. That's an exciting part of the Uruguay Leaders Summit, is to have conversations about that movement, that kind of develop that, appropriate though developmentally progressing movement from a sense of charity to service to justice, right? From moving to addressing immediate needs to looking more intently at systemic injustice and systemic realities. It's a real challenge to do with young people. who are developmentally in lots of different places as they come to schools. They come with their own life experiences and the perspectives of their families, and so it's challenging work.
If I may, I'd like to step in and say that our hope is that our Ignatian Global Scholars Program, and most of you, if not all of you, have cohorts engaged. So please chime in on this. If our hope is that 2-year process brings the students to the point where they are ready for the action, and that's grounded in those 2 years of requisites that they've gone through that prepare them. So I would love to hear, especially those who have participated in Arupe or one of the eco. Brenna, you did some eco gatherings for students too, right?
Yeah, we just had our first student ecology summit in conjunction with the West Coast Arupe in California, and it was really awesome. So we had over 100 young people together, and I just think the other great benefit again is a lot of the students kind of feel alone on an island who are working for justice in their schools, especially our eco students, and so for them to get to nerd out together for a weekend has just brought a lot of energy, and they share ideas with each other. This is what we do at our school. How could we do it at how could we share ideas? So we're going to have a reunion Zoom call with the Eco Summit students happening soon too. So I think there's a great benefit to getting students together.
And the faculty, because one reason we're all together is because we're all doing that work. And some of us now have been working together for, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, and it changes. So anybody that can align in your minds or experience the global scholars and either Arupe or the ECO, and then also to Chris and Brenna, how can we bring more of our students into this, but then continue I don't want to say work, because Chris, the first thing you said is it's fun. That's really, I mean, it's fun and relationship building. That's really what brings everyone together. It's shared, you're with your people doing what you love. So, does anyone have any thoughts or ideas along experiences?
One thing that, I think schools have done is use the Arupe Leader Summit as a way to do some intentional formation and community building with a core team of students, even maybe, using it as part of their kind of leadership formation process for next year's campus ministry, peer ministers, or things like that. And then kind of built out from there and said, how can we bring parts of this experience to, other students, other parts of the community in different ways? Can those students then go be the peer ministry training, leaders at the beginning of the school year and things like that? So almost like a training the trainers model.
And do any of your cohorts stay, or delegations stay in contact? Do you have a way of, like, you're going to do a Zoom call, Brenna, with the eco group? Do the Arupe? I know I took some students once to the teach-in who had been at the summit, and they walked in the teach-in and they were like, oh my gosh, like running to see their pals that they had made at the Arupe Summit. But are there structured ways that you keep these students in contact with each other?
There are not, we do not structure ways, but a couple things that happen sometimes. One, on the second day of the summit, we do what's called the social justice round robin, where we actually pair 2 schools together. And they spend about an hour and a half kind of going through sharing what service and justice looks like at their schools, and really totally from a student perspective. The faculty members just sit back and watch, and it's really neat to see. And sometimes what will happen is that points of collaboration will develop out of that. We've had schools that have gone and done visits to other campuses to learn about particular projects or initiatives. We've had schools that have met up on Zoom to share more, and things like that. So I think it happens more organically. Sometimes there are really good, it's like dating. Sometimes you match up schools that fit really well and they find ideas that are of great interest to share. And sometimes you don't, and that's okay too, right? So the Eco Student Summit that Brenna hosted in California in January has some of those students will encounter each other at the teach-in because they'll be presenting about their action plans that are focused on engaging their campuses in Earth Day this spring. They'll share about that work then when they come to the Ignatian Family Teach-in for Justice.
And I guess one idea, I don't want to like jump the gun, but we've like had we have 3 Arupe summits every year, and I could see having like a cohort, trying to do a cohort summit with student leaders from the global citizenship programs, because I think Pedro Arupe's life is such a great example of what it means to be a global citizen. And so, we can build upon those themes that you all have been talking about with each other. And I think that would be really exciting. And then you could figure out how we want the students to stay connected. And when we do the program normally, there are also faculty sessions. So there would be time for chaperones to kind of talk to each other about what's going on in your programs right now. So
What do you all think about that? Or Ignatian Global Scholar cohort, obviously anyone invited, but specific for ecology or Arupe? You all are so quiet today. I feel like I'm gonna have to start calling on you. Harry, thank you.
Yeah, I would be all for that. I mean, we are involved in both the teaching as well as the Arupe. I don't run that myself. Gil Stockton runs those for the most part. And with the size of our school, there's a lot of overlap of students who do both or would all 3. But I would certainly be all in favor of doing either a segment of a summit or even having an IGS summit and just doing something like that where not to step on toes that are already doing in this work, but also just maybe adding potentially a 4th or that's really national and that really focuses on a lot of the same issues that you're already covering, but really making it a specifically global experience and talking about migration, talking about obviously climate, talking about all these kinds of other aspects. That's I guess would be my takeaway from that, or to do that either virtually or in person. I think in person clearly would be better if we had the numbers and the venue and all that kind of stuff in the planning, but certainly virtually at the very least could. And then we could also sustain that, I think, a little bit better within our cohorts that are already predetermined as we meet with them weekly or monthly or as it is. So.
Thank you.
I would just echo Harry's comments and the idea of maybe having a global citizenship focused event, because our school is involved in IFTJ, and I know we sent some students to the Eco Summit. I'm not involved in either of those things, so that would be a little bit outside my wheelhouse. But in the Global Scholars Program, I know there are students who would be interested in something like this.
A question for Chris, you and Brenna. You do 3 summits a year, and is that because also we're all working within bandwidth, right? So is there bandwidth within your organization to grow that?
It's a great question. We have come like this close to having a 4th summit probably 3 times, and for a variety of reasons, we didn't do it. there is more demand for the Urupe Leader Summits than we have supply.
Imagine.
That's in one way it's a we're okay with that because it is hard. Just like anyone can appreciate if you offer a class and only 3 students sign up, right? It's hard to justify allowing a faculty member to teach 3 students for a whole class for a semester or a year. It's the same thing with an Urupe Summit. Like we don't want to kind of have a summit that isn't fully filled. But I think we'd be open to it. The one challenge that we find is we do the Urupe Summits in the springtime with the idea that it's really forming leaders almost for next school year, right? So it's kind of using the spring as the launching pad for getting kind of folks in the pipeline and ready to go for the fall. I think you all can agree if you just even trying to do a gathering in your province, finding a time when everybody is available in the spring semester, after about the last week in January, there are 6,000 different spring breaks, ski breaks, etc. And it does get a little bit, tumultuous. And then with different Easter ways of taking off for Easter. So that's actually been the bigger challenge, is to figure out where to fit a 4th one in. We're not opposed to the idea. One of the things that, as I mentioned, we see it as setting up this pipeline for future leaders. So, generally folks are not bringing seniors to the Urupe Leaders Summit. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but generally it's sophomores and juniors, which really serves the school, well. So it's possible. I think it would be really intriguing to do it with the global scholars because there is this context, and it could even be, it could be seeded with some ideas or a little bit of cultivation that might lead them in a particular direction. The action plan, for a lot of schools, the students they're kind of a mix of interests and backgrounds. So you don't necessarily get a super pure action product. But you could, if depending on the students you brought and what context they had coming in, and with a little bit of framing, you could end up, in a way, like what Brenna was doing with the Eco Student Summit, while not quite the same model, it is similar in structure, just with an ecology lens, right? So a little different pedagogy, but same ideas. Yeah, I think it's exciting to think about. We'd definitely be open to considering something specifically for the global scholars. The other idea would be to have, schools, maybe try to include students in the scholars program in their Urupe delegations, for those of you that are already engaged, right? And kind of infuse your school's delegation to the Urupe Leader Summits a little more intentionally. I mean, I say that, but I recognize the logistics of that, right? The student you want to go and when it is, and et cetera. It's not as easy as it sounds.
And they tend to be regional. Am I correct? The summit.
In theory,
Yeah.
but Jesuit schools are not afraid to travel, just
No.
like Jesuits.
So, regionally speaking, I wonder if there is, I'm looking at everyone, you're really from across. I also notice that you're all carrying on in the chat, which please unmute and ask, because we want to share that with everyone, the questions. But I wonder if there is a concentrated regional area that this of special interest. And also, Clara, as you're listening to this, because I know, are there things that are sparking in your mind, like, wait, our action teams, or if there's anything, because we're really, as a group, trying to figure out what are the best avenues for us to start connecting our global scholars to each other in a purposeful way. and in action. And to us, the Arupe Summit and the Eco that seems like a ready-made format that is perfect. How we develop that and then continue the conversations will be something that everyone on this call and anyone who watches the recording will have to start thinking about. But Clara, I don't know if anything has been popping in your mind as you listen.
Yeah. Hi. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. Some of you that we met in person last year around this time, right? It was March that we had the Ignatian Global Scholars Gathering in Cincinnati. Yeah. So it's good to see you all. I've been willing to join this meeting since then. And so thank you, Catherine, for reminding me today to join you. Yeah, I've been working, as Chris said, in like a couple of things already. I'm working actually with Brenna on a program for Gonzaga College high school students to try to talk about climate-induced displacement and how we can prepare like a role play activity so you can do it in your schools. I've been talking with a couple of teachers also on ideas that how we can teach about migration and refugee issues in our classes from, for example, maths or science or religion, different subjects, and how we can prepare, for example, a curriculum guide so you can have all those ideas in the same document. So if you're interested, for example, in joining that working group, I'm more than welcome to have you join in this group that I hope that we have the material ready by September, or well, August next year, this year, 2025. I was speaking about the school year. It's the same idea that we worked this year on how we can get students involved in advocacy. So we develop a curriculum guide also with some faculty and staff from Jesuit universities, but also Jesuit high schools on how we can teach about advocacy and being involved in advocacy. Regarding Advocacy Day, this year is March 25th. I think some of you have already registered, but you are also encouraged to register yourself and your students to participate March 25th during the whole day. We organize everything, all the meetings virtually. You just need to participate in the training that we have the week before and then join the meetings with your students. But we organize the meetings, we organize the talking points, we train your students, and you have the curriculum guide also available for you. That being said, it's for us, it's not a summit or any like specific dates other than Advocacy Day that you can join us. It's more like throughout the year, the ways that you want to do activities in your class regarding migration or refugee issues. Like, for example, Jesuit Portland, they are the masters on Walk a Mile in My Shoes, and Jenny, she can share everything about it. Well, I have recorded her in a webinar, so I can share the link too. But you can do Walk a Mile in My Shoes, you can do Journey into Exile, the other simulation exercise that we have. Those are ideas to organize events around social justice weeks, for example. But I think the best thing could be being part of the Action Team Network. Can I share my screen, Catherine, super quick? Do you mind? I'm taking 5 more minutes, maybe.
Yep.
So
It should be available to.
Yeah,
share.
that's great. So let me go, because I can send this afterwards. You have all the links, all the information available. But for example, Action Teams is just a network of all your clubs and social justice groups that you have already in your schools that do advocacy, that do migration, that do different activities related with social justice, that want to be part of the network. And I get in touch with them usually twice a month with ideas on how to address these issues in their schools and ideas to do during the meetings and events that they can organize. So that could be a good way to follow up after you participate in one of the ISN or Arupe summits, or it's a great way that you can get your students to do things. I have the outreach calendar. They have all these ideas, and I'm always available for them and for you to provide you with more ideas. These are the schools that are part of the network right now. Some of you are here, and they're part in different capacities. Some of them, they're just like, say like, hey, sign in and I will receive everything and I will get whatever works for me. And some others are even very active, like, for example, Georgetown Prep, participating and accompanying migrants that are being accompanied by Holy Trinity Church here in DC. So they participate in that accompaniment program. So it depends on the school and what they want to organize. Some of them will be just a couple of awareness raising activities throughout the year and then Advocacy Day. It depends on you. It's totally fine. It's just being part of the network and receiving all the information. So I think it's a great follow-up for the summit. And then what I was talking about Advocacy Day, and you will find on the screen that the QR code that you can scan and it will redirect you to our advocacy webpage. So you have active right now, I think 5 action alerts. We invite you to either you yourself or share it also with your students. They can send their emails to their representatives, to the members of Congress, and let them know that they want to protect the access to asylum right now in the US, or to protect funding for humanitarian assistance that right now is at risk. Those issues will be addressed also during Advocacy Day. As I said, you can participate from your class, but also maybe talk to campus ministry and say, we will reserve this classroom through the day, and then the students will come in and out and participate only during the meetings and get out class. Meetings are usually just half an hour, so it's easy for them to just get out of class, go to this other classroom and join the meetings with a teacher or their staff member that it's available for that. Another idea coming, Lenten, another good way to get this global perspective. We have letters written from staff, JSN staff members from all over the world, sharing how like reconciliation and, well, the experience of reconciliation that they have during this year serving at JRS. We think at JRS right now that we need to build this reconciliation among like refugees and the host communities, but also here in the US. And we want you all to reflect on how we can be builders for reconciliation in our communities that are so divided, right now. So these will be like weekly reflections with invitations for prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Another good way involving maybe campus ministry. And finally, I think you must all receive from your principals maybe this information about all the stop work orders that the Jesuit projects have had. For us, JRS in 9 countries, it was going to be a 90-day review process, but last Wednesday we received the termination letters for 5 of the 9 programs. So kids not longer being able to go to school in Chad, in Uganda, in South Sudan, in Iraq, in Colombia. So, I mean, other ways that the action teams or yourself that you can participate is trying to protect these projects that Jesuits have, not only with JRS, but also with Fe y Alegría in Latin America and the Caribbean. So different ways. I will send this to Catherine, and please, here is my contact information. I'm happy to jump on calls or send you emails and send you all this information, and always happy also to do the follow-up if you have any questions after, I don't know, maybe going to the summit. I work with Brenna, with Chris all the time. I'm happy to collaborate in any of these. I'm happy to bring the global perspective on migration, not only about the US-Mexico border and what is happening in our country, also in the interior, that we are working with migrants through the Migrant Accompaniment Network, through our chaplaincy programs, and through our program in El Paso, Texas, but also what is happening in the 58 countries where JRS is present.
Thank you. Thank you, Clara. Thanks so much. And this is why we are so grateful that you are here, that ISN is here, because you're our windows really to what's going on. And I'm going to put out to, I know you're all in schools and the school day keeps going. So as we close, there are so many beautiful opportunities and resources, and we have access to all of them. So I'm just going to put out for our challenge and our attention is what we want to really start thinking about is how do we, as our students engage with that, what steps do we need to take to connect our students with each other and begin to create those relationships? So as they're working together with students from other schools in these areas, how do we, our JSN schools, foster and grow those relationships? And many are going to end up in college together at universities in their future. So the more that we can really do now, I think is going to help overall. Even for me, coming from the West, moving out East, there's a big difference in our schools and so our students experiencing that and getting to know a student on another coast or in another area grows in a way that right now in the US, I will say, where is Stacy still on? And Canada is maybe even more important than our work with other countries. So I think it's time for us to grow those relationships between each other. Any last, and I know I sent a lot of emails today, so thank you all for maybe not trashing those if maybe you did, but I will send a follow-up email, and I just really ask, and I will ask in the email to just really think of what can we do and what can we do in collaboration with Chris, with Brenna, with Clara, with each other. So any quick last thoughts? Is Bob still on, or he got off? It's gonna have him say something. See, we're being recorded too, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to record this now.
Catherine, I just wanted to reemphasize what you said. I think it's really important, to having space to recognize that one just across this binational region of this conference, right? That there are lots of different ways that the local and regional culture that our schools exist in, influences how we understand and engage in the work of justice, right? And so, and having that opportunity for students and faculty to talk with colleagues from other places is really, really valuable. And I think that's also something that the Society of Jesus really offers the U.S. and Canadian Church, is a global understanding that sometimes we don't see in the way our local church operates, right? So I think that's gatherings like this, the fact that you all meet regularly, that you're seeking to create opportunities for students and for colleagues to have these interactions that see the world as bigger. The fact that Clara is here talking about the needs of refugees across the globe, like all of that is needed in our world. So I'm just really grateful to be with you all today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Catherine, this is Jenny. I first of all, thanks Chris and Brenna and everybody. I'm thinking about Chris, I was actually taking lots of notes when you were talking about Father Pedro Rupe, because that's something that I talk to my students about before they do walk a mile. And I show them that video that JRS put out last year. It's a 4-minute video, but I feel like it does such a nice job of setting context for them about understanding the bigger picture. And so as we think ahead to some sort of gathering for our students, it's like if we think about the IPP, it's the experience of that and their ability to reflect on what they learned from gathering together. But I also think it's giving them a deeper sense of context about who we are and what we're rooted in and why we do what we do. Because otherwise, for faculty also, it can feel like there's so many things to do that we don't know where to land. And so to have opportunities to almost take that 20,000 foot view and see how all of the pieces fit together, right? How JRS connects to Ignatian Solidarity Network, connects to our Ignatian Global Scholars Program. And then students picking a, I can send the video to you. I think if you just search JRS and Pedro Rupe, it'll show up. It was done for their 40th anniversary. But just finding a way to not have kids feel overwhelmed, but to find something that they're passionate about that fits in with what they're doing. And Brenna, I noticed that it looked like the Eco Summit was with the California one. And so maybe and maybe this already happens, each of the summits has a different theme. So there is like the global scholars could go to the Eco Summit and they're just going to focus more on ecology. There could be one that's more focused on refugee awareness. There could be one that's focused, so I don't know because I haven't been to one, but I love the idea of people gathering and also a virtual option. I think that's always important.
Thank you, Jenny. And again, I'm going to bring it to ultimately, it's the connection and the relationship building. And I, no matter what the topic is, I think of the work that we've done as we've grown as a global perspective leaders cohort over the years. And it's because of our relationship building, no matter where our expertise lies, that I think is really where the fruits have shown. So Chris, any last words before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you. Thanks to Clara for joining us, and to all of you. It's great to see so many of you, and grateful for the work and the partnership. And don't hesitate to reach out both to JRS and to ISN in ways we can support you, as Clara said, because that's for both of us, that's such critical parts of our mission. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And you will be hearing, so let's all put our thinking caps together and start seeing where we can take this.